Hello everybody, welcome to tonight's show, guys. I hope that you're ready for this because we have some breaking news. This is huge. The Texas District Attorney has announced the arrest of an election worker over the corruption in the 2022 election. This will be the beginning of what we could see as a massive change in election ruling, election laws pertaining up to the 2024 presidential election. There's been wide speculation over a lot of ballot harvesting or illegals voting in the presidential election. There's also been concerns over will the elections be free and fair with the integrity of the election workers. What you're about to see is a huge announcement that could shift the way that we carry our elections moving forward. And this is happening just today. This is breaking news, but this is something where as we move forward, we want to make sure we do things right, fair, and just. I want to say thank you to everybody that is watching. If you're not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. We thank all of our subscribers, and we also thank everybody that donates and gives a super chat to the channel. And if you don't mind clicking the thumbs up like button right there, guys, you're about to see some breaking news. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. You're going to want to see this. Check it out.
Jordan, also a prosecutor with our Public Corruption Division. I want to thank them for what has been a long and thorough investigation of the 2022 election, general election. You know, anytime that two or more affidavits are filed by citizens in the state of Texas complaining about an election violation, by law, the district attorney is required to investigate. That is what happened in this election. Multiple affidavits were filed, sent to us immediately after the election, and we did what we always do. We called in an independent investigative agency, the Texas Rangers. The investigation actually began shortly after the election. And we now know, because the Secretary of State's office has done a preliminary report on Harris County's general election of 2022, that there were major problems with that election. We all remember long lines, some disruption in voting because of the machines, but primarily the complaints were lack of paper ballots, that voting locations ran out of paper. Some have said this was directed at one party. Our investigation has not found that to be so. However, the Secretary of State's office has said that the insufficient distribution of ballot paper to polling locations and the loss of an effective monitoring system resulting in those ballot paper shortages at multiple polling locations across Harris County and on election day is attributed to a cessation of voting at certain locations. You can look at this public report and find what the Secretary of State's office found and reported as their findings publicly to support them, why they found what they found. Now, we know that voting was disrupted. We know that there are some people in Harris County who did not get to vote. We know this was a failure in terms of an election that the government has a responsibility to run effectively, ethically, and most importantly, accurately. Here's what the criminal investigation found, because while we didn't know how it happened, now we do. Defendant Daryl Blackburn, who worked in the now defunct Elections Administrator's Office, has been charged with 6 felony charges, 5 of them tampering with a document, 1 theft by public official. This individual was specifically assigned to see that paper was allocated properly in all of the polling locations. He had other responsibilities equally as important, but this is really the nuts and bolts of the election.
What we're about to see here is how easily an election can be swayed whenever the paper ballots are not dispersed and distributed in the manner that they should be. Because remember, when you look at counties, usually counties sway towards one side or the other. And if there's not enough paper ballots in certain places, then those people aren't able to vote. This is why they say early voting is super important, because you don't know what could happen or if somebody tampers with something pertaining to the election on election day. And then after election day, there's no more voting.
The allocation of paper, and it is at the heart of much of what the problem was back in November of 2022. Unfortunately, under the not so watchful eye of Isabel Longoria and later Clifford Tatum, Mr. Blackburn represented that he worked full-time for Harris County, while in truth, he worked a second full-time job elsewhere. The result is he didn't do his job for Harris County. Can't do two full-time jobs and give them the credit and the attention that they need. And you may remember that Isabel Longoria was appointed. She had not been employed prior to her appointment, and she left in ignominy after the primary election of 2022. She was followed by Clifford Tatum, an individual who remains employed with Harris County in Precinct 2. Now, while working for the elections office, Mr. Blackburn not only stole thousands of dollars from Harris County in the sense that he lied on timesheets, much more
stole money from the county and also messed up the entire election.
Importantly, he stole individuals' rights to vote, a basic constitutional right in our democracy.
Wow.
Because people on both sides were delayed in their voting, halted in their voting, rerouted in their voting. I don't know that we'll actually know the damage there. But it's compounded by the loss of public trust in our election system here in Harris County. That is the real cost, and it is priceless. You know, it's interesting that the greed of one person, where checks and balances have been removed, where folks like Mr. Blackburn were allowed to work from home. I'll tell you, the scheme was crude in terms of stealing from the county. Nothing sophisticated here. And yet the consequences were massive.
Did you hear that? So not only was everything very simple that this person did, but they affected so much. They stole thousands of dollars, and you're about to hear it gets even worse, guys, that one person, when there's no checks and balances, when we're not doing things like we're supposed to with our voting, how this affects everybody, and this is just the beginning.
Some of those consequences are that there have been hundreds of thousands of dollars spent in terms of investigations, not just the cost of the Texas Rangers and our prosecutors, but the Secretary of State's office and countless private litigants. The millions lost, though, does not compare to the damage done in terms of whether people will feel good about going to vote, and we want them to. By holding Darrell Blackburn criminally responsible, we can at least attribute criminal responsibility to this individual, a public servant who did not serve, who instead fleeced taxpayers for his salary, and we paid a much greater consequential result for his actions. I do want to say,
and this is the guys, just think about this. This is just happening. They're just finding this out. It is 2024, close to the 2024 presidential election. This happened. In the beginning, she told us the investigation started right after the 2022 elections. Just imagine what would happen if as this continues, and you can't say that sometimes or that this may not happen across the other parts of the United States. And this is where, as this person is being convicted, opens the door for other convictions as well as other things pertaining to election law to make sure that our elections are fair, free, and make sure that we're not doing anything illegal.
That the investigation found no evidence of intent to impact the outcome of the election for either party. But it is undeniable that there is a lot of evidence to show that Mr. Blackburn's crime did impact the election. We know that.
And guys, right there, the impacted election because one person decided not to do their job, wanted to mess things up, and was out. And it's 2024. That election's done. The person who lost, they lost. And this is the state of where things are at. This is why this is super important, guys. I want you to listen to me. This is why it's super important of the RNC, who now has over 154,000 volunteers to be watching all the swing states, all the ballots, all the, where they're counting the votes, to where they're gathering the votes if there's mail-in ballots, because they want to make sure that our elections are free and fair. If we do not do this, we could lose the integrity of our elections. Why? Because there's people out there that have ulterior motives, and a lot of people say, "Well, it's against the law." People break the law every single day. There's people that want a certain party to win so bad they're willing to break the law for it, and they don't care. That's why we got to make sure that we check, we go do early voting, and we always make sure that we account for our votes. Now, on the flip side of that, President Trump's opponent, Kamala Harris, is now took a 180 on the border. She is now saying that if she becomes president, she will be tougher on the border, immigration, and whatnot. A lot of people are asking the question, you're vice president now. You've been vice president for the past 3.5 years. Why haven't you done anything for the past 3.5 years? Why do you have to be the president to do anything or to stand up for Americans' lives, and Americans' safety at the border? Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section. If you do not mind, please hit the like button. It really helps to grow the channel right there. Check this out. She's literally taking a 180 degree on her view and stance on the border.
So if Kamala Harris wants to flip the script and play tough on immigration, she better own up to the mess her own open border stance has left behind. Like this horrific story, 2 migrants were arrested in Coney Island this week in connection with the brutal rape of a woman at knife point. The victim is telling the New York Post, quote, "He didn't try to rape me, he tried to kill me. I kept telling him God was watching." You can
Woman raped by migrant breaks silence. The person was illegally in the United States, should not be here. This woman has suffered a horrible crime, and who is taking accountability for it? The administration is nowhere to be found. Biden is nowhere to be found, and Kamala Harris says she's going to be tougher on border whenever she's the president. Let me know your thoughts in the comments or the chat.
Expect to see a lot more of these crimes, criminal immigrants roaming the streets if Kamala wins in November. Check out this resurfaced clip of Harris on detention centers.
I want to know, when you become president, would you be committing to close immigration detention centers?
Absolutely, on day one. On day one.
So, Harold, listening to the X thing last night, Elon Musk was talking about how he doesn't consider himself a conservative. He considers himself common sense. This is the sort of thing I think he's talking about. A lot of these policies are truly indefensible, and they're making people's lives worse in America.
Look, all violence regardless of committed by anybody, is tragic and unacceptable. This issue of migrants coming into our cities across the country committing these crimes touches a chord with us even more because these people are not American citizens, and there's questions about whether they should be here or not. My belief on Vice President Harris is she's going to have to answer these questions. Talk about what...
It's been now counting 23 days since she's been the presumptive nominee, and she still has not taken an interview.
What she did, what she learned, and how she would be different, and then the American people are going to be their ultimate judge and ultimate arbiters of whether or not they believe she's telling the truth. I do think that it's only fair, and I think Americans will be fair, the country will be fair as they listen to her, and they will judge to see if she's being authentic. If she's being ambitious in saying these things, I think she will be penalized. But I also think she will ask President Trump, as he's not fully answered the question, why did you block the bill that Republicans and the Democrats negotiated? We don't live in a dictatorship. There was an opportunity to at least get a better plan or set of laws on the books. If you think you're going to be elected president, that's fine. But at least let's get the ball rolling. But I don't doubt you. She's going to have to answer these questions in this debate, and even before that, over the next few weeks.
If we don't live in a dictatorship, how is it that she's running for president without one vote? But I'll let that pass.
She got the delegates. She got all the delegates.
I'll let that pass. Okay, here's the bottom line. When you have a sanctuary city, sanctuary policies, right to shelter, no cash bail, all Democrat supported, defund the police, you're going to have a world like this. And with Kamala Harris in the White House, it will only increase exponentially. All you have to do is see the passion in that woman's voice when she said on day one, I'm going to close those migrant centers.
Wow.
We're going to send them into your community. We're going to give them a right to vote, a right to health care, education, whatever they need, we're going to give it to them. And you Americans who fought in the wars and built the streets, you're going to pay your taxes to pay for them. And you know what? She says in 2019, when she was running for president for a second, she said on day one, I'll secure the border. Well, you've been sitting in that White House for 3.5 years. What the hell have you been doing about the border other than yapping and laughing about it? Because these crimes, as if they're not vicious enough, are being continuously repeated. The same predators, for example, the one who raped the woman, threw her down, 46 years old, threw her on the ground, put a knife to her throat, while his buddy, talking about aiding and abetting, took a metal pipe to her boyfriend. The same guy just got out of prison for rape 2 months earlier. All right. And right before that, this same young guy named Vanilla, he's 24 years old. He also was charged with public lewdness in New Jersey. These are people, I know I got to wrap. These are people who don't belong in this country.
Is there any way that Harris can spin this?
Well, all of that brings us to her record as vice president. So all the things she said she would do happened. Why? Because Biden put him forward. They did 94 executive orders. She was part of that. But recently, her team has tried to say she's distancing herself from Biden. But guess what happened? When asked about that, Karine Jean-Pierre yesterday said, oh, actually, Kamala has been Biden's critical partner on everything. And then she helpfully reminded everyone that Kamala was the last person Biden's...
So the White House press secretary just said that Kamala Harris has been the key individual who's been helping Biden pass all these laws over the past 3.5 years, and yet she's not held accountable to what has happened with inflation, the border crisis, all the foreign wars. Guys, I smell a cover-up and a scandal.
Before he made the fateful decision to leave our people hanging in Afghanistan. So Biden's team is not going to let her go away quietly either.
So, but you couldn't have predicted that criminals would come into the country if you opened the borders, right?
No, that would never happen. This is a double whammy. You have illegal immigration and you have crime put together. It's like a Reese's peanut butter cup of preventable misery. But I don't see this as a political issue. I never have. It's an issue of boundaries in civil life. If you look at crime, if you look at the border, if you look at biology, if you express concern over the loss of boundaries in any issue, you are perceived as being oppressive. You know, it's how you get an open border, an end to cash bail, explicit books in middle school, trans surgeries on kids. If you look at each one of them, it's about a removal of limits. This is why the Democrats in the mainstream media cannot cover this story that we cover all the time. It's because they believe that somehow boundaries are an affront to their higher morality. It's now a right-wing thing to say, there's something wrong here. I mean, shouldn't we establish some limits? And then they have to weigh the benefits of tackling that problem versus the risk of agreeing with Trump. So they would much rather let people suffer than be seen on the side of Orange Hitler.
That's from Gutfeld, the great respecter of boundaries.
You know it, buddy.
Okay, coming
I
up.
always ask for consent with you.
Guys, and I'm telling you this, the more and more that these things keep popping up, the more and more you have normal people that are coming out, doing videos, and participating in this whole thing of this political election to say, what the heck is going on? Check this out. Normal guy.
Does anybody else feel like we're in the Twilight Zone with this whole Kamala Harris thing? Like this is a bad episode of Punk'd and we're just waiting for Ashton Kutcher to come hopping out of a bush somewhere? Do these people not realize that she is currently the VP? She's part of this administration, which is what we've been living for the last 3.5 years. Yet when you try to ask them, what do you think she's going to do differently than what we've experienced the last 3.5 years, they don't have a single answer.
Nope.
This one guy I was talking to the other day was like, well, she's going to put things in place to get inflation back where it needs to be and boost the economy. What? These people are so far checked out of reality, it blows the mind.
Yes, it does.
She could have already done that. She's had 3.5 years to do exactly that. And you honestly think she's just going to pull the answers out of her ass all of a sudden because you nominated her president? She had all the answers, she just didn't bother to tell anybody? Is that what you're saying? Please help us understand.
Right now, I'm trying to understand too. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. How is it that she's the president? Everything right now that she is stating is saying, when I get into office, if I become president, I will do this on day one. You are already in office. You already have the capabilities to do these things. You are gaslighting America. You're lying to people, and it's like people are so oblivious they don't even see what is right in front of them, that she is 100% gaslighting them. Guys, am I crazy? I don't think I am. We're all seeing the same things. We've all lived the past 3.5 years here in the United States and seen the detriment to the southern border. You just heard it, another woman was raped by 2 illegals. There's too much bad happening because of this administration, and nobody's taking accountability. When will the politicians take accountability for their bad decisions, their bad policies, and when will America hold them accountable with our vote? They haven't done a dang thing with the border, with inflation, with anything like that. Mortgage rates are higher, still more than double what they used to be. Gas, food prices are still higher, and yet people want to vote them in for another 4 years? Not only that, we're living through one of the greatest scandals in the history of America right now with Joe Biden. Watch this.
It's amazing to me that Donald Trump, none of his surrogates, no one like on the pro-Trump side seems to be able to effectively hit Kamala Harris with what is the most obvious thing to hit her with. It's the greatest scandal in American history, which is like what you just said, that we don't have a president. The president of the United States, everybody has essentially admitted, is too senile to run for president. Yet he's going to be president until January? We are in a proxy war with the biggest nuclear power in the history of the world, and we have another proxy war-ish type thing that looks to be devolving into a wider regional war in Israel, and we don't have a president. No, this is like the biggest scandal in the history of the republic, if we're a republic anymore, and Kamala Harris is directly implicated in this. Like, she was one of the major people lying through her teeth that Joe Biden is sharp as a tack in private meetings. And it seems like somehow the Trump campaign has not been able to effectively hit her for this. It's like right there in front of us. You pulling Joe Biden out was admitting That he's too senile
Of
to run for
course.
president.
Yes.
And yet you're not invoking the 25th Amendment. This is what it's for. He clearly can't be president. And then what does it say about the machine that they're quite happy with that? That works very well for them.
I mean, there are two levels in which it's upsetting. One is the practical level, which is you probably do want a commander-in-chief if you're on the cusp of nuclear war, which we are. But the other is philosophical and speaks to whether our current system can continue. I mean, we're just admitting now that that we don't have an executive, that we don't need an executive. This is governed, that we are governed by an unelected body of people whose names we don't know, whose motives we don't understand. Like, what?
Right. And also as we
that's
all,
sort of the end, right?
And as we all know, the only reason they pulled Joe Biden is because it became clear he couldn't win. But if he could have won, they'd be quite happy to keep him in there. Like, they like that. It's probably better that they don't have this guy who every now and then might think he's president of the United States
But why
of
is there no curiosity about who they is?
Yeah, well, that's a good question.
I mean, I can't answer that. I mean, I think most people assume Obama is at the top of that pyramid, but I can't confirm that. We don't know. I haven't heard really anybody in a position of authority ask, like, who does run the government?
Yeah, and I don't know that there's an easy, I mean, I don't know the answer to that, but I don't know that there's an easy answer.
Right?
I don't think it's Obama. I mean, I think Obama has influence, you know, but I don't know how much Obama really ran the government when he was president of the United States. I certainly know that he definitely at the very beginning got rolled by his generals, and I think that he, you know, I don't exactly know where he was on some of these issues, but at least with like what he ran on in terms of healthcare was not what Obamacare was at all. In fact, he, if you remember way back in ancient history in 2008, Hillary Clinton was the one who was for the individual mandate.
Of course.
And he criticized her. I actually thought it was a great line he had in the debate. He was like, the individual mandate solves the health insurance crisis in the same way that mandating you buy a house solves the homelessness problem, which was like a great line.
Yes.
Totally, and that's totally exactly right. I mean, how does that help anything to mandate you buy something that you already deemed you can't afford to buy?
Right.
But then that's what Obamacare ultimately was. And why is it? Oh, this is good for the insurance companies. So it's like, it seems to me like he was always getting rolled by what are the powerful interests, which are essentially big business that owns the government, uses the government as a tool to increase their profits. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know who's really running things. Is it the Director of National Intelligence? Is it Biden's chief of staff? I don't know, but it's not Joe Biden. That's for sure.
And Kamala Harris seems like kind of flotsam on the waves of history herself. Like, she's not, is she making independent judgments and choice?
Kamala Harris has not taken an interview in 23 days. She has not given her stance on policies. She is gaslighting America in all of her teleprompted campaign events, which are not essentially campaign events, they're concerts that they do concert / campaign event, and they bring in all these stars to try to draw crowds, not like how Donald Trump does it. And what's hilarious to see is that when common sense people ask common sense questions, Kamala Harris is not there. Joe Biden has not been there. And the real question that needs to be answered is, who has been running the United States of America? If President Joe Biden cannot run for re-election, and he's stepping aside not because he wanted to, but because he was forced to, then who's calling the shots? Well, we saw Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, and Obama. Those 4 people went up to Kamala and said, hey, look, polls are showing this dude can't win. We need him out. Are you ready to jump in? Because you're the only person that can take his $240 million war chest of campaign money, or else we have to refund it all back, and then we have to then ask for it all back by law. That's literally how it went down. And now we're seeing this movement, honeymoon movement, of everybody's just loving Kamala Harris in the polls and whatnot, when everybody's asking the question, do you not realize what she has not done over the past 3 to 4 years? Do you not realize that she's been vice president? She could have done something a long time ago. How come you're giving her a pass and you're not asking for accountability for why she hasn't kept the border in check, why she hasn't helped out with the inflation like she has said that she's now going to do. All these things she could have been doing this entire time, yet she hasn't. That's the state that we're in right now.
Is she driving her own narrative? I don't think so.
I don't think she stands for anything. You know, I think she's just like, I don't think there's one issue ever where it's like, no, she believes in this passion and she's gonna stand up and try her best to make sure this goes through. It's kind of like, you know, she was an aggressive prosecutor in California, but if she was a prosecutor right now in California, I'm sure she'd be one of these progressive prosecutors. It's just
sure.
like, which way was the wind blowing? Is that the thing to get me more power?
Well, how's this for crazy?
Guys, and this is the thing, what a disgrace, like Jacqueline Myers twerking for Congress. They literally had, I think it was Megan Thee Stallion, twerking at a campaign event. And my whole thought is like, other countries are seeing this. They probably think that we're idiots. They probably think like, who the heck is running the United States when we carry out these special events like this? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, because to me, I just am so dumbfounded that we seriously are just in a state of people don't understand that they could do something now. They don't have to wait to be elected. They already have the power now. Just do something. We got Michelle, member of the channel, in. Let's go. Everybody give some love to Michelle, guys. Let's jump into this next video. Check it out.
For an extended interview last night, and he went hard after Vice President Kamala Harris on the issues.
She is considered more liberal by far than Bernie Sanders. She's a radical left lunatic. She's saying she was strong on the border. We're going to be strong. Well, she doesn't have to say it. She could close it up right now.
Exactly.
The election's coming up, and the people want to hear about the economy and the fact that they can't buy groceries because they don't have enough money to buy groceries. And this stupid administration allowed this to happen.
The Harris campaign responded this way, a statement. Trump's entire campaign is in service of people like Elon Musk and himself. Self-obsessed rich guys who will sell out the middle class and who cannot run a live stream in the year 2024.
Wow.
All right, this is a woman who woman-splained artificial intelligence has 2 letters, but okay. Brian Yennis has more. Brian.
Harris, at its peak, about 1.3 million people were listening in as former President Trump and Elon Musk spoke for more than 2 hours yesterday in an audio conversation on X. But it was marred by technical glitches that delayed the event by more than 40 minutes. Users who tried to join the X Spaces convo were met with messages that said, quote, "This space is unavailable." On X, Musk claimed the glitches were due to a cyber attack, writing, quote, "There appears to be a massive DDoS attack on X, working on shutting it down. A DDoS, or distributed denial of service attack, is a federal crime. It involves flooding a site with data and knocking it offline. An attack has not been independently verified, and critics are skeptical given the rest of X appeared to be operating normally, and because people remember the technical problems that riddled that X space conversation last year when Florida Governor Ron DeSantis launched his presidential campaign on the platform. Nonetheless, once the conversation started, Trump and Musk spoke about the assassination attempt, fossil fuels, and illegal immigration.
Just cannot have a situation where our police officers are beaten up on camera by a gang of illegal immigrants, and then nothing happens to the guys that beat up the cops. I mean, and they're let out. This is unacceptable.
Well, we're going to change it, and we're going to get them out of the country.
There's a lack of empathy for the victims of the criminals, and too much empathy for the criminals.
Musk, who is funding and leading a super PAC to get Trump elected, explained why he's endorsing the former president.
I call myself, historically a moderate Democrat. So this is to people out there who are in the moderate camp to say, I think you should support Donald Trump for president. And I think it's actually a very important junction in the road, and we're in deep trouble if it goes the other way.
And Harris, back to you.
All right, Brian, thank you very much. The Harris campaign, as we were just talking about, has been mocking that technical glitch that Brian was reporting on. It delayed last night's 2-hour Trump interview by more than 40 minutes. and pretty rich for a candidate who's been running for 23 days to have her campaign going after him.
Yet.
And she still has not sat down for a formal interview or even held a press conference, which leaves the Trump campaign surrogates trying to explain.
I understand why the media wants to be able to ask questions. That is your job, and certainly we respect that. I'm on here answering your questions, and I'm sure when the time is right that Vice President Harris will sit down and answer all the questions that she needs.
And that was a mistake, by the way. Obviously, those are Kamala Harris's surrogates trying to explain it all, and you saw that. Our chyrons on screen were right. Trump's not buying any of it. And he said this to Elon Musk last night.
He hasn't done an interview since this whole scam started. It's nice to have a forum like this where I can discuss something at length. And by the way, you think Biden could do this interview? Do you think that Kamala could do this interview? They would take a pass. It's pretty sad when you think that somebody that does this for a living can't answer a question or is afraid.
Exactly. Right now, we have Kamala Harris who won't take an interview because everybody on her side said that they're afraid for her to speak. And now it's getting to the point where you just can't hide it anymore. That's what a lot of people are saying. They're saying, is America so bad that they can hide a presidential candidate through all these things and she's not able to speak? Check this out.
Well, the liberal media's sudden turnaround on Kamala Harris coverage is now being called out as teetering on propaganda. For reference, here's some of her coverage from her 2018 campaign and when she first took office. The New York Times, quote, how Kamala Harris's campaign unraveled. And there was Politico on her office, quote, not a healthy environment, and quote, rife with dissent. And CNN added, quote, exasperation and dysfunction. That's when they were being honest. But even more recently, there were calls for President Biden to drop Harris as VP. Salon, New York Magazine, even Politico came out with these headlines. But now she's the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee, and boy, did they do a heel turn. She's running against Donald Trump, so all the concern, all the questions vanish into this. Quote, the reintroduction of Kamala Harris. Look, the quotes in this are stunning. Harris, here's some of them. Matched for the moment, an overnight sensation, a political phenomenon, the swiftest vibe shift in modern political history. They're not even trying to hide it.
No, I mean, all of that is true, especially the overnight sensation part. and apparently we have a lot of overnight sleepovers for this one because I think they're on like round 8 or 9. Something I shared with our viewers on The Focus yesterday was how many times they've tried to reinvent her in 23 days. I mean, we don't get a redo like that ever in life. So what is it that they don't want us to know about Kamala Harris? Is it that the scripts are not even edited by her that she reads on the stump, let alone written? Is it, and look, everybody's got speech writers, but since we can't get a sit down with her, that maybe she would be participating in writing the speeches would be helpful to know. All those off the record relationships that she's forming with legacy and liberal media now will come into play. So that once she does finally sit down, and I welcome people to look at this because this will feel like another reintroduction. Maybe it'll come with a cover, who knows? But then those reporters and journalists and writers will begin to write things like, well, we've always known that she told us this. All of that off the record then goes on the record and it solidifies her rise. It's kind of a thing that happens in journalism. When you know you can't speak about something, you can triangulate it if you want, or you can wait for that subject to tell you it's on the record now. Watch for it.
Cheryl, you know, one of the interesting things about this is the line in the timepiece, the campaign denied a request for an interview for this story. So you don't even have to go out and interview to get this kind of coverage. It just comes to you.
Exactly. Pretty amazing that you get the cover of magazine. You don't even have to talk to the magazine. But, you know, our good friend James Freeman over at the Wall Street Journal makes a really great point about all of this. This love affair with her is it could really backfire because it certainly backfired with them and Joe Biden. You know, they covered for him. They knew there were problems, that he wasn't with it. And then all of a sudden, they all get exposed. And by the way, he says, well, friendly media doomed Democrats. All this congenial coverage of Harris could repeat the Biden mistakes. So think about it before you do the next glowy piece of Kamala Harris. But they also say the press failed, and it looks like they're going to fail again because she's going to have to do an interview.
Yeah,
Paul,
I don't
you
see
out
it.
there.
Oprah will get involved. You'll see.
Paul, I do want to focus on Time Magazine and their track record.
Yeah.
So this is their assassination attempt cover. They first posted on X this assassination attempt cover of Donald Trump, the infamous fist in the air, where he said, fight, fight, fight. But as the Federalist points out, they didn't put it to print. After they got criticized for putting this image out, the actual image is on the other side. No picture of Donald Trump.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think actually a perfect metaphor here would have been if Time Magazine published that Kamala Harris cover, but when you opened it, the interior, all the pages were blank. Right? Because that's realistic what you got here. And it is a little bit about Time Magazine. Why? Because who knew it even published still? All right? I didn't know that was still around. So they've decided to just completely dispense with any journalistic ethics here just to try to get on the radar. Hey, we're still here. This is the equivalent of the kid in the back saying, hey, teacher, I am still here. You know, you haven't called on me in a while. They want us to pay attention to a magazine that nobody cares about anymore. And it's published, by the way, if you drill down, by a...
Let me know, do you think that there's more propaganda now than 4 years ago whenever Biden and Trump were going against each other, now that Kamala Harris is now running for president and she's pretty much flipped on every single policy that she's ever stated in the past? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section.
Cisco activists, so you know exactly where they're coming from. The best thing to do with this is laugh at the cover and ignore it, because it's all going to be propaganda. And the proof of that is, imagine a right-leaning journalistic forum put out that kind of a cover for Donald Trump. The screams on the left about it being just, oh, it's like Goebbels. This is Soviet propaganda. They'd all melt down. It's embarrassingly obvious.
Yeah, and Time Magazine agreed. They've fallen into irrelevancy, but they get a lot of traction and a lot of notice. And this is, again, let's do side by side, Emily, for you. You see Kamala Harris on one side, and on the other side, this is how they cover Donald Trump. You see him melting down. I mean, you can't deny the double standard.
No, and just to underscore, she didn't even sit for this interview. To me, it read like an influencer.
Not
Just
on the record anyway.
So sophomoric, and they were sort of painting what they expected, right? Let me just say the words, and then that will be reality. And included, by the way, a totally farcical civics lesson, because I love how they pointed out how she became the de facto nominee, which was simply because Joe Biden endorsed her. I mean, every thread in there was such a joke and illegal, so demonstrably ridiculous. And I felt that my favorite point, I thought, besides the swiftest vibe shift, was when they talked about that while in the beginning they were unsure. In the past 2 weeks, Kamala has come out as the energetic fighter that her allies know her for. Energetic fighter? We haven't even seen her. That's the point.
3.5
She has not taken a question from the media that you purport to represent. Where are the answers to our questions? Exactly.
Well,
I loved Glenn Greenwald's report when he said, look, somehow they tried to transform her from a national embarrassment to a transformative pioneer overnight. So to your guys' point, go ahead and shout it to the rooftops in San Francisco. But for the rest of us Americans, I'll take my reality with a cup of water.
Yeah, Time Magazine, well, they've been exposed. And remember who they had up for Time Person of the Year? It was the Trump prosecutors. They actually wanted to possibly give them an award.
Time, we know. You're still there. It's okay.
We see you, Time.
Guys, that is the craziest thing. When you look at how many of these news pieces just try to destroy Trump and just try to uplift Kamala Harris, which nobody liked her. She had 28% approval rating as vice president, the lowest out of every vice president since they've been monitoring this. And now they're trying to uplift her to be the savior of the Democratic Party and the next savior for the United States. It's all fake. It's all a lie. I do want to say thank you to everybody that is watching. If you're not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. We want to serve you every day with the top news. We love you. We thank you. Thank you for all the super chats, all the donations, guys. We couldn't do it without you. We appreciate you so much. We just want to continue growing this community. Let me know where you're from, because I'm telling you what, it's so cool to see. We have people from Norway, London, Hawaii, all across the United States. It is so cool to see everybody come together and us join on True Life News and see the truth from all these different angles, different platforms, so that way you stay informed. We love you, appreciate you. If you don't mind, hit the thumbs up like button right there. It really helps to grow the channel. let's get some fireworks. Thank you so much for tonight's show, guys. We will see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.